Thanks for checking out today's episode of The Experience Curve, where we explore the personal journeys of accomplished individuals, breaking down the steps they took to get where they are, which I hope just might inspire you on your own path forward. I'm thrilled today for my conversation with entrepreneur, digital nomad, and advocate for living life on your own terms, Sam Laliberte. She's a visionary behind the Freedom Lifestyle podcast and community. Instead of resigning herself to a life of monotony, Sam made the bold decision to carve out her own path to freedom. From unexpected unemployment to creating a thriving multi-six-figure freelance business while traveling the globe, Sam's journey is a testament to the power of resilience, resourcefulness, and an unwavering belief in oneself. In today's episode, Sam will share the pivotal moments, practical strategies, and hard-earned wisdom that enabled her to build a digital nomad lifestyle business from the ground up. So whether you're dreaming of escaping the confines of a 9-to-5 grind, craving the freedom to work from anywhere in the world, or simply seeking inspiration to pursue your passion, this conversation's for you. So get ready to go on a journey of discovery, empowerment, and liberation, because by the end of the episode, you'll be inspired to embrace the unknown, seize opportunity, and fearlessly chart your own course to success. Hey, Sam, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you joining me on this show, and it's been, great to connect, albeit very briefly, but just to kind of hear your backstory before we started this show. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me. I know it was just a little quick convo backstage, but now we have an hour or so together. We'll see how long this takes.
Yeah, and you're, like myself, you're in a very sunny area right now, Costa Rica. Most people would be jealous of, and it sounds like you've been going. I think you said it's your 5th year down in Costa Rica for a couple months.
Yeah, I've been working online for 6 or 7 years now. And when I first started becoming a digital nomad and have the ability to work from anywhere, you did the classic, like, I need to get as many different passport stamps as possible in the shortest amount of time and new, different. But I've really learned over the years, there's something very appealing to just returning to the same place, a place that you love, a place where maybe you have some friends, things are familiar, you have a good work spot. So literally for the last 5 years, we've rented the same Airbnb in the same town. We buy bikes and leave them here. And it's just truly our paradise. It's been such a great way to start the year. We're here for 2 months, and then we head back home when ski season is just wrapping up in Canada.
Avoid the snow, right?
Well, as much as we can, yeah.
Yeah. So for people who are listening, I think there's the digital nomad term. People think, again, a lot of my friends would think Portugal. They would think, more of the popular areas. But for you, just transitioning from employment, you had unexpected unemployment, right? And somehow you've launched this like multi-six-figure freelance business. That to me sounds, and to people listening, I'm sure sounds like a dream, because you're kind of in paradise down there. And I believe this sort of journey started for you back in 2017. So, if we could start there and kind of hear like how you put this whole thing together.
hmm My journey starts as a love story, which is one of my favorite stories to tell because it really started in a way that was so meaningful to me and in my personal life. I was living in Toronto, and a few months prior to this moment, I had met somebody, started dating him, and I was really excited about this relationship. I just had one of those feelings like this could be it. I feel like this is a special relationship, but he lived in San Francisco. And I was working for a tech company that did not allow us to work from home, let alone remote work from another country. It was a hard 40 hours minimum in the office every single week, where we can see you Friday at 5 o'clock. You're there in your seat. And so I just kept having to fly back and forth, San Francisco, Toronto, San Francisco, Toronto, which is, a 5.5 hour flight, $1,000 round trip typically for a couple nights with him. And I really felt like I was having to choose either this stable job that I did like the culture was cool, I was doing well, I was making good money, it was in sales. But in this particular case, I was just focused on making this relationship work. I wasn't even thinking about being a digital nomad or any of this. And so I did what most people would do, which is okay, maybe I should move to San Francisco. I could just go get a job there. I work in tech, I'm in sales. Let's see how this goes. So I tried that process. Long story short, spent 3 months interviewing at companies. It went so well. I was getting offers from like the coolest companies, more money I had ever seen. My ego was getting so big to the point that to my boyfriend, I was like, I think I'm going to get my own place when I move there. San Francisco, it's going to be a new life for me too. Just thinking I was so cool. Pick a company, sign the offer, quit my job. And then, literally 2 weeks after all this happens, the company I chose pulled the offer. They were like, yeah, we looked into it and we can't actually get you a visa. So, very dramatic, as you can imagine.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I mean, is that common? I've never, for people listening, just, I mean, you would assume, one would assume that would all have been worked out well in advance before they offered you this employment opportunity.
You would think it was so devastating. And I was like mid to late 20s, fairly young, fairly inexperienced. I had just always been told, you get this signed contract and you're good. Don't do
Sure.
anything until you get that offer and you sign it and they countersign it. So I thought I had done everything right and was just so excited about it. So when that happened, I was embarrassed. I was traumatized. I was scared. I was even too embarrassed to tell my old company what had happened. So when they were throwing me a going away party, I went and like didn't tell anybody that I had
Oh.
actually lost my opportunity to move to SF and wasn't going. So it was pretty brutal.
Wow. Okay. So you're there and you had already, did you move or did you say, okay, I'm coming back to Toronto? What was the next step from there?
So from there, I tried to repeat the process. I'm like, okay, well, I did it once before. I can do it again. I'll just start the interview process. I'll just find another company. Actually, at first, I tried to go back to one of the other companies who had sent me an offer who I had said no to and said, I think I made a big mistake. Actually, I choose you. And I did really like them. Like I had trouble picking between two. And rightly so, they wrote me back and saying, we need to be your first choice. Like the offer's no longer valid. It's like, oh my gosh, like how did I screw this up? This is so brutal. So I just start the process again, but now I'm unemployed. So I'm like, I'm just going to go to San Francisco for an extended period of time and hang out there. And a couple weeks prior to me going to San Francisco, I like serendipitously run into my old boss, a person I used to work for years prior at the mall on my birthday randomly.
Hmm.
And he's like, oh, what's going on now? Blah, 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 what's happening? And I had actually reached out to him in the process about, which company should I choose? So he knew about my SF plans. So I share with him what had happened. And he says to me, well, actually, we might be able to hire you for a short term project. We are launching a new entrepreneurship center. We're going to have an event in a month. Maybe we could hire you to just like plan it, do the marketing, make sure people come. You can even come and host it and speak at it. Like, this sounds amazing. $1,000. Okay, great. I'll take the project 1 month. And I go to San Francisco and I'm planning the event. I'm doing the marketing from it. I'm doing all the emails. And I have this kind of like light bulb moment going off, being like, well, aren't I doing what I wanted to do? I'm in San Francisco now. I'm getting paid. Maybe I could just do this. Maybe I could just do this freelance thing and then I wouldn't need a visa and I could kind of just work from anywhere. So that had happened, but I was also still interviewing at companies. And Joe, it was so crazy how your energy just can change so quickly. This time, no one was giving me offers. No one was giving me callbacks. No one was inviting me for a second or third interview. People could just tell I wasn't into it. I had already realized that I think I actually have a better option, which is, why do I need to fully give up on Toronto, leave all my friends, leave all my family? Maybe I could have this hybrid life and just work online and do freelance. So that's how it all starts. And, that was 7, I think, years ago. So a lot's changed, but it started just as a love story.
That's amazing. So because a lot of people would say if you're unemployed, that's like the worst time to look for a job. You want to look when you are employed because for some reason I don't know, in experience myself and friends, they seem to find jobs better when they're already gainfully employed than not. So who knows, right? But I would feel like when you're trying to put this together, because you're way ahead of the 2020, basically all of San Francisco decided to work from home to a degree, to some degree. And so you were kind of ahead of yourself. But the idea of these people who, we hear about a lot more now, digital nomads, of course, but back again, only 7 years ago, I don't feel like that it was such a strong. Did you look into like what these people are doing, or was it at this point you hadn't even realized that's what you were trying to do?
I had never even come across the term digital nomad, I don't think. I had known about freelancing, but I do still remember like Googling what is freelance, what is a freelancer, how do you become a freelancer? Like I really didn't even know the basics. I was looking at websites like freelancer.com and Fiverr and Upwork, thinking that would be a way for me to get gigs. So no, I hadn't really realized how this could impact my lifestyle. And it was before COVID made remote work go mainstream. But I knew that I wanted to be able to go back and forth between San Francisco and Toronto. And I knew that there was starting to be some people doing this. It was mostly travel bloggers. So back then, you'd have people like Nomadic Matt, these people who would go around the world doing their travel blogs, talking about what it's like to live in this location, go to this restaurant, staying in this hotels. And that was like the only way it was really being talked about or see as having this like dream job lifestyle. And that's actually why I started my podcast at the beginning, was because I felt like I don't know anybody doing this. I'm just going to start a podcast so I can interview people like Nomadic Matt and find out how they did it and hope to figure out my plan for how I too will have the freedom lifestyle.
That's really cool. Yeah, because I think, again, that I was going to ask you, where do you go from there? Do you, in terms of, obviously you're Googling like, remote or, these sort of keywords that might help you kind of put together what exactly is going on in your mind and learn from others. Were there people that you sort of leaned on, maybe your old boss for, to kind of help you put together what you were putting together?
Mm-hmm. Really interviewing people on my podcast was helpful because it just normalized that what I wanted to do wasn't completely impossible. There were at least some other people in the world who were living this lifestyle, and I wasn't completely crazy for having this idea. So I think that helps. Your environment is huge. And if you don't have that in your day-to-day life, create it. Listen to podcasts, join online communities, be part of a mastermind, do something to make that feel less strange. And that's going to help so much with your mindset and your confidence to do something that's different, which I really was. So I think that was a big part of it. And then another thing I did well was I was just very flexible in my approach. So my focus was location independence. How can I get paid to work from anywhere in the world? And so that was my North Star, which meant that I was open to taking all different types of work. I was doing copywriting for 10 cents a word. I was doing social media management for someone who I had met 3 years prior. I helped run another conference that was taking place in Toronto that only needed me to be there for the actual event. And so I was open to how I was going to work. I just needed it to be location independent. And I really worked my network. So I did go on those websites like Fiverr and freelancer.com, and that's still part of my strategy now. But initially, that momentum came from people that I knew, sending
Hmm.
emails like, hey, here's my situation. I'm looking to take on some part-time freelance work. You're a business owner or you're at a company that you have some leadership position. Is there any projects that you could use some help with? And just leaving it open-ended like that, it was surprising how effective that was at just booking calls and hearing how many people were like, now that you mention it, we've been talking about doing this thing forever. And like our team is completely at capacity. We don't have anyone to do it. We can't distract them. We would love for someone to come in for 3 months to just bring this project to life. Perfect. It's actually such a win-win.
Did you find that in the beginning it was hard to actually generate income? Or like in terms of, okay, you have your network, you have a sort of, like you said, your words, North Star of what you're doing, but you're also taking on kind of whatever you could find. Was it easy to actually find the money from it in the beginning, or did it take a while to sort of build clientele?
It was easy to get gigs. Like I think the gig economy had started more so than remote work. And basically my process was to just eliminate that conversation altogether where I have to convince someone to let me not work in their office. I focus on people who didn't live in the same city as I was in. Because then right away it's like, well, obviously I'm not coming into the office. We live in a different state or a different country. And so that was really helpful. But people were open to the idea of gig workers, freelancers, project-based work, contractors. But at the beginning, I didn't know how to get paid well for it.
Okay. Yeah.
So, like I said, like 10 cents a word
Sure.
copywriting, not really knowing my worth. I was grinding. I was working probably 50-hour weeks. I would go to the summer cottage with my laptop. Everyone's enjoying the water. I'm on my computer typing these blogs that meant nothing to me. So, the work wasn't meaningful yet and the money wasn't meaningful yet. So, I was still having to live very modestly, let's say that, really knowing what it cost me to live and eliminate frills, which was easier to do than I thought. Like when you're in a job that you don't like or you're not happy, you need to spend a lot more on Friday night cocktails and I need to do retail therapy and all those things. I'm going to take an Uber to go to my friend's house because I can't even imagine getting on the subway. I'm so exhausted from this training job. All of a sudden I was like, I don't even need to spend my money on those things. So it's a combination of all of that that helped in the beginning.
Yeah. So when we're, I guess, being frugal, a lot of things that people can take away here, but was there like a specific mindset shift maybe that maybe clicked in your head where you're like, okay, I'm chasing this, I'm grinding, like you said, and it kind of works smarter. Was there like a light bulb moment in that time of your life?
Yeah, I think what really worked for me is I focused on one goal when I was starting my freelance work. A lot of the people that I end up coaching into taking the leap from a 9 to 5 to doing freelance or service based entrepreneurship, they get really fixated on what they offer immediately having to be this thing that they do forever. It has to be the thing that they love doing, that pays well, that they can do from anywhere, that it's the industry that they want to work on. And they need to nail their expertise and have a website and have business cards. And they just take it so seriously. And yes, absolutely. 7 or so years in, I have all those things and I've figured out how to do work that I love, that makes good money, that gives me the lifestyle I want. But at the beginning, I didn't try to solve all of those things at once. I just tried to solve one problem, which is how can I work from anywhere? And then each year, quarter, month, whatever that cadence is, it just got better and better and more in aligned with how I want to be living. And it's still improving. Like my latest thing right now is how can I do work that like really makes an impact in the world? Like I've nailed making money, doing freelance, getting clients to pay me the amount I want to be paid to do work that I know is high income type work, but I would love to give back more. And so that's why I'm now doing more coaching and motivational speaking and just always trying to make it more aligned with exactly what I want to do. But at the beginning, I allowed myself to be flexible. And as long as I could do it from anywhere, I was happy at the beginning.
Yes, and we did talk in the beginning. Obviously, putting this whole business together that you put together, you did deal with a lot of setbacks and challenges in the beginning. But have there been challenges now that you're like up and rolling? You're like, okay, I can live in Costa Rica, I can live in San Francisco, wherever it might be, and I can make money, and I'm happy with the money I make. I'm happy with the work I'm doing. I'm confident. Everything feels like it's in the place it needs to be. Are there still challenges that you face to this day or even recently that part of being a digital nomad that you could share?
Yeah, I think once you've really nailed your expertise, so let's call it, I have two expertise right now where most of my money comes from. I do podcast consulting. So I have a podcasting agency. I do one on one consult and coaching calls. I have courses. Like that's an expertise. And then I've also been helping remote companies plan retreats for their team. So destination events where they can all come together. I've been doing both of these things now for 3 or 4 years. And my biggest challenge, as most ridiculous of a problem as it sounds like, is it's boring. Like I've just been doing the same thing over and over again. And I'm saying the same advice and I'm repeating the same proven processes. That like ability to become an expert in it, though, has allowed me to start getting paid really well to do it. And it also doesn't take me as much time because I've done it so many times. So I'm like repeating the process. So it's like this. It's this friction that I have right now where I've like nailed how to get paid well without having to work that much. But I'm not as engaged or passionate about it because as an entrepreneur, you often like to take ideas from 0 to 1. I really like working in the unknown. I like bringing something to life for the first time. I like not knowing how it's going to go. And so my latest challenge is just like not always finding I'm not energized by some of my freelance work. And so that's like the latest pivot I'm trying to make and taking some risks to be able to say no to a few contracts that I'm kind of getting a bit over, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a good point because I think people feel in some capacity when they're freelance or independent contractors, they have to take every gig because they don't know where the next gig's coming from. So
Totally.
for you, it sounds like, okay, I'm getting to the point where if it's not making me happy, it's maybe not worth doing. Is there some validity to that?
But money, it's tempting to say no to good money. I would say
Mhm.
that that's something I really struggle with is turning down opportunities to get paid well. I mean, I'm constantly like, oh, well, another $10,000, what difference could that make? And I already have more than enough money. I have more than enough saved. I own my own home. So I know logically I don't need to be chasing that as much as I had to a couple years ago, but it's hard to say no to things because exactly you're right. Like, well, what if I lose this client that I've had now for years that's been steady income on retainer? What if I'm not able to replace that? What if I regret that decision? What if I try to go back and they say no, like it happened to me when I was looking for the job in San Francisco? So there's constant mindset work that you have to do, and you really have to like check your emotions of like where's the scarcity coming from because it's not actually real at the stage I'm at.
Yeah, and that brings me to a question here. When you mentioned mindset, and maybe a shift of the mindset for people who are working a day job and they're like, again, they would love to do what you do and be able to just give it up and go remotely, but they're afraid to leave that security of the steady paycheck. How would you recommend someone sort of put their mind in a different place to where they can understand that yeah, you might struggle in the beginning, but it's gonna happen if you put in the work.
hmm I think there's two pieces of this. So there's definitely the mindset piece, and then there's also just the security piece, which I think is so real. I am not the type of person that is just going to go around telling people to blow up your life with no safety net. And if you believe it, it'll come true. And if it's your dream, like don't stop, don't question anybody, just do it. I mean, there's a side of that, like you have to really believe in yourself and believe it's possible, and you have to have that level of confidence, but you also got to be realistic. And so the advice I give to people from the mindset standpoint is think about what could go right, not what could go wrong. And it sounds so basic, but I know I've had a lot of therapy around this, and my therapist says you're just stacking on negative thoughts. So I'll start, let's say, when I first wanted to become a digital nomad, it would be like, well, I own my house. I have to pay a mortgage. I have a car. I have a cat. My friends are here. My boyfriend doesn't have a flexible job. Like all the reasons it's not going to work. And another way to look at it is like, what if it does? Okay. What if I did find a solution for all of those things? What difference would that make? Like, I'm there. Imagine living it. Imagine all of these things working out. Imagining all of these things, all these problems I had being solved. And I think when you come from a place of, okay, I'm just going to tackle these challenges one by one, you can become really resourceful and it's a lot less overwhelming. But a lot of people don't even allow themselves to get into that resourceful headspace. They just focus on all the reasons it won't work. So you got to train your brain to think about like, well, what if it did work? And then make decisions from that energy because you're going to have way more clarity. And all of a sudden, solutions you weren't even thinking of, they weirdly just start to present themselves. And that was very much the case for me. But then the other piece around not wanting to leave your steady income, absolutely. I get it. You should be paying your bills. You should be like able to live your life without being in complete stress because if you are every single month, like if you don't have savings, then you're definitely going in the red. But for a lot of people, they're like their savings are depleted and it's their first time seeing their money go down, not up every single month. That is not a good place to be creating a business from, because then you have such this energy of desperation and like it needs to work. And you put all of this pressure on your business and all your pressure on this new dream. And I don't think that's the vibe either. So I think the best way to do it is try to get a flexible, part-time, project-based, contract freelance gig that pays for your bills, at least break even, right? Have your daily burn rate, your monthly burn rate be paid for, reduce that burn rate, like really look at what it costs you to live, go through your credit card statements for the last 6 months, get honest. What are you spending your money on? Do you need to reduce that? Have one gig that pays it, and then experiment and play without it feeling like it has to pay your bills. Like, I think that's the most sound advice I can give to anybody, regardless of knowing what is their unique situation, what is their family dynamic, what are your payments that you have to be making, how much money do you have saved. If I don't know that information, that advice I would give to anybody.
Of course. Yeah. And I was going to say, I think that comes again with not everyone has the same situation. Oftentimes, and maybe like yourself, you have a partner, you have a spouse, you have a spouse and children, you may just have a child, right? Everyone has a different situation. And in you talking to people on your podcast or in just your space in general networking, what about people who are trying to convince their spouse? Maybe like they're sold. They're like, hey, I know I can do this. But like their spouse is like, well, I don't know if I want to go live in Spain, right now I'm kind of comfortable in wherever, their home base is. What sort of considerations do you think for people with significant others or families that they should sort of bring into the mix?
I think pitch it as a test, right? Pitch it as an experiment. Pitch it as an adventure that I want to take our family on for a defined period of time with a clear start and end. And at that end point, I promise if you're not liking it, if you hate it, if it's not working, we could always go back to this way of living. I think if you pitch it as like, I want to do this forever and sell all of our things and move to this place we've never been to, and you've like never done that as a family, that's a big jump from somebody who maybe is risk adverse or like likes their life. And it's like, I don't want to blow up my life. Like, I know you're looking like you're having some midlife crisis. I'm okay. So like, that's not going to work for me. But I think if you pitch it as like an adventure, time bound, that takes the pressure off and it allows them to get a taste of it. And ideally, they're on board and it works. And if they don't like it, then you're going to have to figure out what that means for your future freedom. And I think that's a big conversation a lot of couples have to have. Me and my husband have had to have it so many times. And we're constantly having to like, co-create and fit like what's your vision versus my vision, and no one feeling like they're making a huge sacrifice from their vision. And we're the lucky ones. Like we both have remote jobs. I have friends who only one of them has a remote job. So they have to navigate what that means. And it's going to look different for every relationship. But yeah, start it as an experiment and then just have open conversation. And I guess decide for yourself, like, do I want this so bad that I'm willing to do it without my family or my partner for a little bit throughout the year? And you have to answer that question.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because I do think there are people that say, you know what, this is something for me. I don't want to go through life and never try something. But, your significant other might be like, well, I support you. but for me, I'm happy here where I grew up or wherever their situation, again, presents themselves in a different way depending on who they are. So, I mean, because you see it on shows. You ever watch like House Hunters or International, and you'll see these families that just say, "Oh, the husband got this," or they're forced. It's a military relocation or something like that. But oftentimes, or more times than not, it seems like having those memories together, you and your husband, whoever it might be, makes it all worth it in the end because it's. Again, I'm not speaking for you, but it's also just the experience of life, not just making this about a job. I want to just do my job. I want to experience other cultures and other countries and being able to just get that out of life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And sometimes you're married to someone who doesn't have that same desire as you. And that's something that you have to navigate. Like ideally, you just meet somebody and you want the exact same things, but it's kind of boring too. You know, there's something
Yeah.
to be said about being with somebody who has a different perspective that you get to grow with because you're coming from this area and I'm coming from this perspective and we both respect each other. So all of a sudden we come together and wow, we came up with a better idea than either of us was even thinking about. Like that's happened for me and my partner a lot. And so you got to also be open to define success on your own terms and like make that up. I think there's a lot of people who could hear the idea of a husband leaving his family for a month to go to Costa Rica while his wife and his child are at home. But I don't judge that. Like, if that's what works for them and they have a way to make that work and they come back and everybody's happy and you get to bring like even more like presence and happiness and joy to your family because you're both living life true to yourself and you're okay with that. I applaud that. But I think you have to be brave enough to have those conversations. And ideally, you have a relationship where it's safe to express that and safe to say, like, this isn't about you. This is like something I really need to do. And I would love for you to come with me on this adventure. But if you don't, is there a way where we can make it work? And if so, like, what are those terms? And like, how can we define that for ourselves? And I think a lot of the relationships I respect the most are defining those rules of engagement for themselves.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point. Defining success on your own terms, and I believe it's your website mentions failure and achievement are often two different paths leading to the same successful outcome. Like, how about you personally? How do you define success for yourself and your family? You and your husband. What do you consider success?
Hmm. Like I have the broad answer around like living life on my own terms, right? Getting to create the perfect day every day, getting to create my reality, getting to say yes to whatever I want, say no to whatever I want, being able to choose. And I think that's like a surface level answer, but if I really dig deep into what does that actually mean, I think that's a reflection of my identity and how I grew up. Like I didn't grow up in one of those family environments where there was a lot of expectation to do things. Like, I don't have one of those family dynamics where my mom's like, you got to call me every single week, or you got to be home for every holiday, or this is how you have to behave, or you have to do these things. Like, I never grew up with a lot of obligation. I grew up very empowered to make decisions on my own terms. And, some people could look at how my family parented and been like, well, they were a little selfish, they should have had more family values, but it is what it is. And it's how I am today. And so anything related to like obligation or doing things just because, oh, that like repels me so much. And I honestly think I'm like a big part of why I'm building a life like this is so I never have to do something I don't want to do. I want to spend time with people and spend my energy on the things that like I actually want to do because that's when I'm going to bring my best self. And if I'm doing something out of obligation, like I'm resentful, I'm cranky, I have a bad attitude, and like, that's not the best version of myself. I also know when some people hear that, they're like, well, if everybody just did what was good for them, what kind of worlds would we live in? For sure. There's obviously people who could take that too far, but I trust myself. Like, I'm a good person. I know I'm a good person. And I do things when I don't want to do them sometimes in the right case, for sure. But like overarching, I don't want to live a life of obligation. I want to live a life that's true to me because that's how I can be the best version of myself. And I trust myself to not take that too far. And I'll still be a good person, even if I'm selfish.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. No, I agree with that. And I think a lot of people who maybe are considering this lifestyle are like, well, maybe it does feel a little selfish at first, but I think it's also a shift of like, look, again, like I said before, what do you want out of life? I mean, some people living and working in the same cubicle for 40 years is depressing as hell. And other people, it's like, hey, I know I'm going to have a good pension or so we all have different goals and ideals of what life should be about. But for you, like I think for digital nomads in general, you think, oh my God, you're in these amazing locations, they're exotic. oftentimes the beach or is, how does one kind of stay productive now that it's like, I don't have a boss to answer to, I don't have a cubicle to sit in, I'm kind of a free spirit to make my own schedule, but like I have like, again, paradise behind me. How do you kind of stay productive and focused because you have all this newfound flexibility?
hmm I think whether you are a digital nomad or an entrepreneur who works from their home office 5 to 7 days a week, like discipline is going to be key. You need to be able to be self motivated. There's a lot of people who admit, like, when remote work became a thing, I couldn't believe how many people were just like, I just can't get anything done unless I'm in the office. Like, I just need to be around people working. I need, like, to have responsibility of and accountability of someone looking at me and making sure I'm working. And I was so shocked by that because that's not my situation at all. Like, I am self motivated, I am ambitious, and if I have a goal, like, I'm very motivated to get to it. And I think that makes it like it's natural for me to be productive. Knowing that that's not for everybody, I would say like there are some things that you can do to really set yourself up for success that I also do. Like a big one is making your plan the night before. That is so huge. Like I have this amazing, it's right in front of me, the productivity planner. Before I start every day, the last thing I do before bed is I look what I have going on the next day. I've got the time. You'll see. Okay. I had my interview with Joe. I got Spanish after this. I had a call this morning. I put in when am I going to go for my workout? When am I going to do each task? And I like set myself up for success versus like starting my day every day being like, oh, what should I do today? Open my email. Okay, maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. Like I'm very intentional about what I'm doing and when I'm doing it because the opportunity cost is so much higher. Like it's sunny right now and I want to go to the beach. And so I know that if I got all my stuff done before talking to you, after this, I'm going to Spanish class. I'm got my beach bag is already ready. I'm going from Spanish right to the beach. And like I know that if I diddly daddled all day and I like only got a quarter of the stuff done that I said I would do, I wouldn't be able to go to the beach. I'd be stuck working all day. So I think it's like a little bit of I want to be enjoying my life because I've built a life that's like so enjoyable outside of my laptop that I'm like very motivated to get things done efficiently. And then I set up the systems in place so that I also set myself up for success. Like I think another thing you could do wrong is give yourself like 6 goals for the day, but then you already had 4 meetings and you know you're going to sleep until this time and you know you have this thing you want to do at night. And it's like, then you just go to bed feeling like shit because you didn't do what you said you were going to do. Like, that's not the vibe. So set realistic goals and then keep making your promises to yourself. Like, you'll just build your confidence. You'll become more focused. And like, I can't wait to just relax tonight, feeling the satisfaction, knowing that I got everything done that I said I was going to get done.
That's great advice. I mean, and speaking of advice, like, how about one thing you wish you knew starting out that you know now?
Everybody loves to give you business advice. Literally, I think everyone's curious about entrepreneurship. Those podcasts around like how I built this and different like entrepreneur stories, those are listened by anybody, not just entrepreneurs, not just aspiring entrepreneurs. People love the idea of building businesses and everyone has an idea of what you should do for your business. So should you offer this? Or like, have you considered this? Or I bet this would work really well. And it's often people who have no business giving you advice on your business, people who are
Sure.
not entrepreneurs, people who are not working in the industry you work in, people who have never done what you're doing. And like that is something that it's hard to not take people's advice, like especially if I'm hanging out with a friend or a family member and they give me all this like feedback on what I should be doing or what I shouldn't be doing. I've taken a lot of that in and I've made decisions in my businesses that I regret. And now I like try to be a lot more ruthless about I only take advice from people who have done something I want to achieve or like have an authority in that space. And is it perfect? No. Like I ask my husband for advice on stuff all the time and he has to be like, I literally know nothing about this, but intuitively, I think this sounds good. I'm like, I'm going to take that or I'm not going to take that. Thank you. You know? So it's a balance, but yeah, just taking people's advice when they shouldn't really be giving advice. And let's all just stop doing that because it's not helpful.
I agree. You do. You get so many people with opinions and like, oh, well, you should do this. And you're like, okay, have you done this before? And they're like, no. And you're like, well, like,
And like, what is the opportunity cost
yeah,
of me doing that, right? Like, yeah, there's a
that's
million
true.
things I could be trying, but it's like, I'm going to try a couple things that I think are going to go well. And that's going to be my focus, but I'm not going to spread myself so thin trying to chase all of these ideas. Like, have confidence in your own plan and your own ideas as well.
Yeah, I totally 100% agree with that. And for people listening, like, how can they contact you, get in touch with you, follow you, connect with you? I know you have your podcast, you're on Instagram, you have a website. Like, what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, on social media, I'm so easy to find. Sam.Laliberte is my name. There, I share a lot of like behind the scenes of what it's like to live this lifestyle. And then every week, I have a free podcast where I interview other freedom seekers who are living unconventionally, very similar to your show, actually, and do solo episodes where I come and teach. But if you think you might be ready to actually like work with someone and be coached and have some accountability on some of these things that we talked about today, I launched a brand new program this morning. It's called Your Next 90 Days. And the whole concept is like, if we work really thoughtfully over Q2, we can have a really chill, fun, flexible summer that we feel like we've earned. And so that's a new program I'm super excited about. I never offer free calls, and I'm offering free calls just to make sure that like it's the right people in the program. So even if you just want to have a free call and pick my brain, you can do that for the next couple of weeks.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. And I'll make sure all these links are in the show notes. And again, sharing your story, I thought it was awesome. It was great to get to know you. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me and this audience today.
Thank you. You're a great interviewer. I do podcast interviews a lot, and I really appreciate just how thoughtful you were with the questions and did your research. So go, Joe.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the beach. I wish I was going with you and the husband.
Next time.
Take care, Sam. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of Experience Curve. Please take the time to share this podcast with a friend or colleague to help get the word out about my show.